America's judicial system is a key pillar of our democracy and was designed to be outside of the political process. A bold idea, but an important one, and one that has held firm for the majority of America's history. It wasn't until recently that it became apparent that the courts, specifically the Supreme Court, have been bogged down and thrown into the political ring. There are multiple factors that demonstrate the shift that has taken place in recent decades to the Supreme Court, which need to be fixed in order to save the future credibility of the court. One of the key factors is the nomination process for justices, the most obvious problem with the court. For the better part of American history, most justices that had been confirmed to the court garnered support from a vast majority of senators at the time. Justices such as Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia, who are very different ideologically, were supported by a near consensus of senators, many who disagreed with both of them, signaling that the qualifications for justices was whether they would be impartial and follow the law, not if they passed a litmus test created by each party. This hasn't been an issue that the justices themselves created, however. It has been perpetuated by lawmakers to a large extent. Beginning with Mitch McConnell's refusal to hold a vote on Merrick Garland, the nomination and confirmation process for justices has been thrown into chaos, with each new opening on the High Court throwing Washington, D.C. into a political war zone. Then, Justice Kavanaugh, in an unprecedented manner, explicitly attacked Democrats during his confirmation hearing and said what Americans and believers in the law and the courts had feared, that justices have political affiliations and they don't take them off when they are a judge.
This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. The Constitution gives the Senate an important role in the confirmation process, but you have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy. The behavior of several of the Democratic members of this committee at my hearing a few weeks ago was an embarrassment. This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups. This is a circus.
Kavanaugh berated the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee, only weakening the respect and credibility of the court that he would eventually get the honor to serve on. There are also interest groups that have gotten advance access to the nominating process of justices, specifically the Federalist Society, a group that presents itself as a libertarian and conservative, and handpicked both Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh to be on the court, along with other justices being former members or closely tied to the group. This may seem like it doesn't matter because once the justices are on the court, they use legal processes and norms to make their decisions, but in recent years, that hope seems to be fading. The second problem facing the court is how they make decisions and what decisions they make. According to the Supreme Court, they receive about 7,000 cases each year and hear oral arguments on somewhere around 80 of them. That's not a lot, but they involve some of the most hot-button legal issues facing the country at the time, such as campaign finance, gun control laws, and marriage equality. Most of the rulings that the Supreme Court makes have wide-ranging support among the justices, with 36% of all rulings since 2000 being unanimous, 9-0 votes. The problem comes into the small number of split, 5-4 decisions that the court makes. They make up about 15% of all the decisions, but the makeup of those 5-4 decisions is what's troubling. Since John Roberts became the Chief Justice, there have been 79 5-4 decisions where the 5 justices in the majority were Republican appointees and the 4 in the minority were Democratic appointees. Those cases are also, coincidentally, cases that support key Republican Party interests, such as campaign finance regulations, right-wing agendas, and civil rights protections. It is this trend that is the most disturbing and the most consequential in the long term of the court. There's an ongoing credibility crisis at the court, and with party-line decisions and politicized confirmation processes, the court will not be able to hang on to its credibility, and its decisions won't be taken seriously in the future by wide swaths of society. It is long past time for Supreme Court justice nominations to either be taken out of the political process as a whole, or to make it a constitutional amendment to require justices to receive 67 votes in the Senate to get confirmed. Doing that will ensure that justices receive bipartisan support, but also forces lawmakers to vote for justices they may not agree with on certain cases. That will, however, improve the credibility and perception of the court, which is the only mechanism the court has to assert its authority. There is also an ethics problem at the Supreme Court, and one that doesn't receive much attention, but is a driving force behind some of the problems that have already been addressed. Supreme Court justices, unlike all federal court judges, do not have a code of conduct that they have to abide by while they sit on the bench. Thus, they can talk at any event hosted by any group and take money from any group they want to without being held accountable for it. For example, Justice Gorsuch spoke at Trump International Hotel for an event hosted by the Bradley Foundation, which is a group that wants to diminish private sector unions. He did this shortly after he was confirmed and just before the court was going to hear arguments on Janus v. AFS-CME, a case on private sector unions. But, because the court has no ethics code, he was not forced to recuse himself and ultimately voted to gut private sector unions. It is problems like these that force the public to wonder if the court is actually nonpartisan, like it claims to be, or if it is simply a political arm of the party that holds the majority on it at the time. There needs to be an ethics code, similar to the ones that other federal judges have to abide by on the Supreme Court, to hold them accountable and to keep the integrity of the court as high as possible. There is no greater institution in the United States than this court. If it begins to fall and lose its place in society, not only will it be detrimental to the image of the United States as a democracy, but it will gravely damage the rule of law in this country.